The stars looked different when you knew war was coming. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UHS Defiant, watching the empty space ahead of them. His ship floated alone at the edge of human territory, waiting for something that would change everything. The Defiant was not much to look at. She was 20 years old, built from steel and determination rather than the fancy materials other species used. Her hull showed scratches and burn marks from countless missions. Most people would call her outdated. Jake called her home. "Captain, we're getting reports from long-range sensors," said Navigator Lucy Carter from her station. She was young, maybe 25, with bright eyes that never missed anything important. "The Zephyrian fleet is massive, sir, bigger than anything we've seen before." Jake nodded but kept his face calm. Behind him, engineer Pete Collins worked quietly at his console. Pete had been with the ship longer than anyone else. His hands moved over the controls like he was playing music. If something broke on the Defiant, Pete could fix it with spare parts and pure stubbornness. "How many ships are we talking about?" Jake asked. 200 confirmed, sir." "Maybe more coming," Lucy replied. Her voice stayed steady, but Jake could hear the worry underneath. "They're moving in perfect formation. Their ships look like they're made of crystal and light." Weapons Officer Sam Brooks looked up from his station. Sam was the kind of man who smiled before a fight and slept well after it. Today, he wasn't smiling. "Sir, our intelligence reports say each of their ships could take on 5 of ours. And that's on a good day." Jake walked to the main viewing screen. The stars stretched out in all directions, peaceful and quiet. Soon, this empty space would be filled with alien warships that wanted to destroy everything humanity had built. The Zephyrians were not new to war. They had conquered 17 different star systems in the past 50 years. Every species they met either joined them or got destroyed. They moved through space like a storm, taking what they wanted and leaving. Nothing behind. Jake had read the reports about them. The Zephyrians believed they were the perfect species. They thought other races were children playing with toys they didn't understand. When they looked at humans, they saw primitives who had barely learned to leave their home planet. "Sir, incoming. Transmission from Admiral Ross at Earth Command," said Communications Officer Tim Davis. Tim was nervous, but he did his job well. His fingers moved quickly over his controls as he opened the channel. Admiral Helen Ross appeared on the screen. She looked tired, like she hadn't slept in days. Behind her, Jake could see the busy command center on Earth. People moved quickly between stations, preparing for a war nobody wanted. "Captain Morrison, the situation is getting worse," Admiral Ross said without any greeting. "The Zephyrians have given us their final demands. They want us to leave 3 star systems completely. They want all our military ships to surrender. They're giving us 6 hours to decide." Jake felt his jaw tighten. Those 3 star systems held human colonies. New Boston had 400,000 people. Haven Station was home to families who had worked for generations to build something beautiful among the stars. Liberty Point was where humanity grew food for a dozen different worlds. "What are our orders, Admiral?" Jake asked. "Protect the colony. Ships during evacuation. Do whatever you have to do." Admiral Ross paused, and Jake saw something in her eyes he had never seen before. Fear, maybe. Or determination so strong it looked like fear. "Captain, Project Iron Wall is approved. You know what that means." Jake's heart skipped a beat. Project Iron Wall was whispered about in military circles, but nobody really knew what it was. The few people who worked on it signed papers promising never to talk about it. They disappeared into secret facilities and came back months later looking like they had seen the future. "Understood, Admiral. We'll hold the line." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Jake looked around at his crew. They were good people, all of them. Lucy had joined the Navy to see the universe. Pete just wanted to keep ships running and people safe. Sam believed that sometimes you had to fight to protect what mattered. Tim dreamed of peaceful contact with alien species. Now they all sat in an old destroyer, facing an enemy that had never lost a war. "Captain," Pete said quietly from his engineering station, "I'm getting some interesting readings from our modified systems. Whatever they did to this ship during our last refit, it's not in any manual I've ever seen." Jake nodded. During their time in space dock, strange technicians had worked on the Defiant. They installed new equipment in sealed compartments and updated computer systems with programs that required special clearance to access. The work took 3 months, and nobody would explain what they were doing. "Sir, the Zephyrian fleet is moving," Lucy reported. "They're advancing toward our colonies. Speed is slow but steady. At this rate, they'll reach New Boston in 18 hours. Jake watched the tactical display show hundreds of enemy ships moving like a school of fish. Each one was beautiful and deadly, powered by technology that could tear apart planets. The Zephyrians had quantum cores that produced more energy than human fusion reactors. Their weapons could punch through any armor humanity had ever built. But the Defiant sat between them and the colonies. 1 ship against 200. It should have been suicide. "All stations, prepare for whatever comes next," Jake ordered. "We have our mission. We protect those people behind us, no matter what it takes." The crew went to work with quiet efficiency. They checked weapons, updated navigation charts, and ran diagnostics on systems they didn't fully understand. Outside, space remained peaceful and empty. Jake thought about the families on New Boston, probably looking up at the stars and wondering if tomorrow would come. He thought about the children on Haven Station who had never known war. He thought about the farmers on Liberty Point who grew food that fed millions of people across human space. The Zephyrians thought humans were weak because their ships looked old and their technology seemed simple. They thought humanity was just another primitive species that would surrender when faced with superior force. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. Fleet Commander Vextai watched the tactical display with growing amusement as the lone human ship approached his armada. The primitive vessel moved in a straight line toward 200 Zephyrian warships, its course unwavering despite the impossible odds. Such behavior could only mean one thing. The humans had finally succumbed to panic. "Admiral Krendall, observe this display of human foolishness," Vextai called to his second-in-command. The older Zephyrian approached the central viewing platform, his 4 arms clasped behind his back in a gesture of contemplation. "Indeed, Fleet Commander, their ship appears to be suffering from system malfunctions," Admiral Krendall replied, studying the sensor readings. "Power fluctuations across all their systems. Erratic energy signatures. Their weapons are showing inconsistent charge cycles." Vextai's large black eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "Fear has broken their primitive technology. They come toward us not in courage, but in confusion. Their ship is falling apart around them." The bridge of the Zephyrian flagship was a marvel of advanced engineering. Crystalline walls pulsed with soft light that responded to the crew's emotions. Officers moved between floating control stations that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Everything was smooth, organic, perfect. The product of a civilization that had mastered the fundamental forces of the universe. "Shall we destroy them immediately?" asked Tactical Officer Zektar from his quantum targeting station. Our weapons could vaporize their crewed vessel before they come within range of our fleet. Vextai considered this for a moment, then gestured dismissively with two of his arms. No, let them approach. This will serve as an excellent demonstration of Zephyrian superiority. When other primitive species hear how we destroyed an entire human fleet, they will surrender before we even arrive at their systems. Fleet Commander, interrupted communications specialist Velana. We're receiving transmissions from the human colonies. They appear to be attempting some kind of evacuation. How long would such an evacuation require? Vexatai asked. Based on the size of their colony ships and the number of civilians involved, approximately 12 hours for complete withdrawal. Vextai laughed, a sound like crystal chimes in a gentle wind. Excellent. We will destroy their military vessel in front of their fleeing civilians. Let them watch their protectors fail. Let them understand the futility of resistance against the Zephyrian Empire. Admiral Krendal moved to the sensor station and studied the approaching human ship more carefully. Fleet Commander, I'm detecting some unusual readings from their vessel. The power fluctuations follow patterns I don't recognize. Unusual how? Vextai asked, though he didn't sound particularly concerned. Their energy output is inconsistent with known human technology. The fluctuations appear to be organized, purposeful, rather than random system failures. Vexatai waved one arm dismissively. You give them too much credit, old friend. Humans have been in space for barely 2 centuries. We have been masters of quantum physics for over a millennium. What could they possibly have developed that we haven't already perfected? The Zephyrian fleet spread into attack formation as the human ship continued its approach. 200 crystalline warships moved with perfect coordination, each one capable of destroying entire cities. Their quantum cores hummed with power that could reshape matter at the molecular level. Their weapons could punch through any known armor, and their shields could deflect the output of small stars. Distance to target? Vextai inquired. 50,000 kilometers in closing, reported the navigation officer. Human vessel is maintaining current course and speed. No attempt at evasive maneuvers. They've accepted their fate, Admiral Krendal observed. Perhaps there is honor in their final approach. There is no honor in stupidity, Vextai corrected. They come toward us because their primitive minds cannot comprehend the magnitude of their defeat. They are insects flying toward a flame. On. The tactical display, the lone human ship appeared as a small red dot approaching a vast formation of blue indicators. The disparity was so extreme it looked like a computer error. No rational military commander would order a single vessel to engage such overwhelming force. Fleet Commander, the human ship is broadcasting on military frequencies, Velana reported. They're transmitting something called Protocol 7 to their colony ships. Protocol 7? Vextai mused. What could this mean? Admiral Krendals accessed the cultural database they had compiled about humans. According to our intelligence, humans often use code names for military operations. Protocol 7 could be anything from a surrender signal to a final message of defiance, or a cry for help that will go unanswered. Vextai added with satisfaction. Their nearest military base is over 100 light-years away. No reinforcements can reach them in time. The Zephyrian sensors continued tracking the approaching human vessel. Its power readings remained erratic, jumping between normal levels and spikes that seemed impossible for their technology to produce. The ship's hull showed decades of wear and battle damage, marking it as one of humanity's older military vessels. Tactical. Assessment? Vexatai requested. Human destroyer class approximately 20 years old, Zektar reported. Standard fusion power plant, though readings are confused. Conventional weapons loadout. Primitive armor plating. No match for even our smallest frigate. Time to weapons range? 4 minutes, Fleet Commander. Vextai moved to the center of his bridge and activated the fleet communication system. His image would now appear on every ship in the Armada. Warriors of the Zephyrian Empire observe the approach of our enemy. A single primitive vessel dares to challenge the might of our fleet. We will destroy it quickly and completely, then proceed to claim the human colonies as our own. Let this be remembered as the day humanity learned the price of defying superior beings. Cheers echoed across 200 bridges as Zephyrian warriors prepared for what they expected to be the shortest battle in their military history. Weapons charged to full power, targeting systems locked onto the approaching human ship, shields strengthened to maximum deflection. Fleet Commander, Admiral Krendal said quietly, I'm still troubled by those energy readings. Perhaps we should proceed with caution. Caution? Vextai turned to face his old friend. Against one damaged ship crewed by primitives? Admiral, I fear age is making you overcautious. Observe our enemy. They can barely keep their systems functioning. Their ship looks like it might fall apart before we have the chance to destroy it. The human vessel continued its steady approach, showing no sign of fear or hesitation. To Zephyrian eyes, this could only be evidence of primitive ignorance. They had no idea they were witnessing something else entirely. The calm determination of a species that had never learned to surrender when their people were threatened. 2 minutes to weapons range, Zektar announced. All ships, prepare to fire on my command, Vexatai ordered. We'll end this quickly and move on to more important matters. The Zephyrian fleet waited with predatory patience as their prey came within reach. None of them suspected they were about to witness the birth of a new age in space warfare. The bridge of the Defiant fell silent as Captain Morrison received the encrypted transmission from Earth Command. Admiral Ross appeared on his private screen, her face grave and determined. Behind her, the command center buzzed with activity as humanity prepared for its darkest hour. Captain Morrison. Diplomatic efforts have failed as expected, Admiral Ross said without preamble. The Zephyrians want complete surrender in 3 hours. 2 million civilians are depending on us to buy them evacuation time. Jake nodded grimly. 3 hours wasn't enough time to evacuate a single city, much less 3 entire star systems. The colony ships were already moving, but they were massive vessels that couldn't jump to faster-than-light travel while loaded with refugees. They needed at least 12 hours to reach safe distance. What are our options, Admiral? Jake asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Admiral Ross took a deep breath. Captain, I'm authorizing Protocol 7, full implementation, effective immediately. She paused, and Jake saw something in her eyes that made his stomach tighten. God help us all. The transmission ended, leaving Jake staring at a blank screen. Protocol 7. He had heard whispers about it in classified briefings, rumors that humanity had developed something revolutionary. Most officers assumed it was just psychological warfare, making the enemy think humans had secret weapons they didn't actually possess. Sir, Lucy Carter looked up from her navigation station. What's Protocol 7? Jake turned to face his crew. They deserved to know what they were getting into, even if he didn't fully understand it himself. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure, but we're about to find out. Engineer Pete Collins stood up from his station, his weathered face showing a mix of excitement and concern. "Captain, I think I know what they're talking about. During our refit, those technicians installed some very unusual equipment. They made me sign papers promising never to discuss it, but if we're implementing Protocol 7, tell me what you know, Pete." Pete walked to a sealed control panel that Jake had never seen opened. The engineer input a complex code, and the panel slid away to reveal controls that definitely weren't standard military equipment. Strange symbols glowed on displays that seemed to bend light around them. "Sir, they've modified our entire power grid," Pete explained, his hands moving carefully over the new controls. "These systems are tied into something they call a quantum displacement drive. I've been running diagnostics on it for months, trying to understand what it does." Sam Brooks left his weapons station to get a closer look. "Displacement drive? That sounds like science fiction." "So did faster-than-light travel 100 years ago," Pete replied. "According to the technical manuals I was given, this system can phase our entire ship in and out of normal space-time. We become quantum ghosts, existing everywhere and nowhere at the same time." Jake felt his heart rate increase. "Are you saying we can become invisible?" "More than invisible, sir. Untouchable. Their weapons can't hit what doesn't exist in normal space. But here's the interesting part. We can still affect normal space while we're phased. Our weapons can materialize at the moment of impact." Lucy stood up from her station, her eyes wide. "That's impossible. The energy requirements alone would require a new type of power source," Pete finished. "Which we apparently have. The quantum core they installed during refit produces more energy than our old fusion reactor ever could. It's been running on standby this whole time, waiting for activation." Jake looked around his bridge with new eyes. His old, battered destroyer had been secretly converted into something unprecedented. The scratched hull and outdated appearance were camouflage, hiding technology that could revolutionize space warfare. "How long to activate this system?" Jake asked. Pete consulted his new displays. 15 minutes for full startup, sir. But, Captain, I have to warn you, this is prototype technology. We don't know what the long-term effects might be. The quantum field could destabilize, or the power core could overload." "What's the alternative?" Sam asked grimly. "Face 200 enemy ships with conventional weapons?" Jake walked to the main viewing screen and stared out at empty space. Soon, that space would be filled with alien warships bent on destroying everything humanity had built. Behind them, colony ships struggled to evacuate millions of innocent people. The Defiant was the only thing standing between the Zephyrian fleet and complete human defeat. "Do it!" Jake ordered. "Begin startup sequence for the quantum displacement drive." Pete's hands moved over controls that seemed to respond to thought rather than touch. Deep in the ship's hull, systems that had never been activated began to hum with power. The normal vibration of the ship's engines changed, becoming something deeper and more complex. "Tim, send a message to the colony ships," Jake continued. "Tell them to continue evacuation at maximum speed. We'll buy them as much time as we can." Communications Officer Tim Davis nodded and began transmitting. "Sir, they're asking how long we can hold the line against such overwhelming odds." "Tell them we'll hold as long as necessary," Jake replied. Lucy returned to her navigation station and began plotting an intercept course. "Captain, if we're really going to engage the entire Zephyrian fleet, we'll need to position ourselves between them and the colonies. That means moving directly into their weapons range." "Do it. Set intercept course, best possible speed." As the Defiant changed direction and accelerated toward the approaching alien fleet, Pete continued his work on the quantum systems. Strange energy readings flickered across displays that seemed to exist in more dimensions than normal instruments. The air on the bridge began to feel different, charged with potential. "Captain, I'm detecting power fluctuations throughout the ship," Sam reported from his weapons station. "Our targeting systems are showing some unusual readings." "That's normal during quantum startup," Pete explained. "The displacement field affects all our systems until they adapt to the new energy patterns. Give it a few more minutes." Jake watched the tactical display as hundreds of enemy ships continued their steady advance. The Zephyrians moved in perfect formation, confident in their overwhelming superiority. They probably saw the lone human ship approaching and assumed it was either fleeing in panic or making a desperate suicide run. They had no idea they were about to face technology that would redefine the rules of space combat. "Sir, Quantum Core is reaching optimal power levels," Pete announced. "Displacement drive will be ready for activation in 5 minutes. Lucy, how long until we reach engagement range?" 7 minutes at current speed, sir." Jake nodded. Perfect timing. They would activate the quantum drive just before entering weapons range, giving the enemy no time to analyze or understand what was happening. "All hands, this is the captain," Jake announced over the ship's communication system. "In a few minutes, we're going to do something that's never been tried before. Trust your training, trust your equipment, and trust each other. We're going to show these aliens that humanity doesn't surrender." The Defiant raced through space toward an impossible battle, carrying technology that could change the fate of 2 species. Behind them, millions of humans continued their desperate evacuation. Ahead of them, an alien fleet prepared to deliver what they thought would be an easy victory. The Zephyrians were about to discover that humans were full of surprises. Admiral Krendol's battlecruiser shuddered as another quantum torpedo materialized inside a nearby ship, tearing it apart from within. He stood on his bridge, watching the systematic destruction of everything he had built his career defending. The proud Zephyrian armada, terror of 17 star systems, was being dismantled by a single human vessel that fought like a phantom. "Admiral, we have lost 170 ships," his tactical officer reported, his voice hollow with disbelief. "Only 30 vessels remain operational, and they are scattered across the system attempting to flee." Krendol studied the tactical display that showed the nightmare reality of their situation. Red indicators marked the positions of destroyed Zephyrian ships, their crystalline hulls now debris fields floating in the void. The few remaining blue dots moved frantically, trying to escape an enemy that could appear anywhere at any time. "Sir, the human vessel is pursuing the ships attempting to reach the jump point," his navigation officer announced. "It phases in and out of existence around them. Our fastest cruisers cannot outrun something that travels through folded space-time." Another explosion lit up the darkness as a fleeing Zephyrian destroyer simply ceased to exist. The quantum torpedo had materialized in its power core, causing a cascade failure that vaporized the entire ship in seconds. There had been no warning, no chance for the crew to escape or defend themselves. "How is this possible?" Krendol whispered to himself, but his science officer answered anyway. "Admiral, based on what we've observed, the humans have developed technology that allows them to exist outside normal space-time. They can attack from quantum dimensions that our sensors cannot detect and our weapons cannot reach." Krendol felt the weight of absolute defeat crushing down on him. He had led fleets to victory against species that possessed technology the Zephyrians envied. He had conquered worlds defended by weapons that could shatter moons. But this was different. This was facing an enemy who had transcended the very rules that governed warfare itself. "Sir, incoming transmission from the human vessel," his communications officer announced with surprise. "They're hailing us directly." "Put it through," Crandall ordered, curious to hear what the victors had to say. Captain Morrison's image appeared on the bridge's main display. To Zephyrian eyes, he looked remarkably calm for someone who had just accomplished the impossible. His human features showed determination rather than celebration, duty rather than bloodlust. "Admiral Crandall," Morrison began, somehow knowing exactly who he was addressing. "I am Captain Jake Morrison of the United Human Federation vessel Defiant. Your fleet has been neutralized. I'm offering you one chance to survive this encounter." Crandall straightened to his full height, calling upon centuries of military pride, even in the face of complete defeat. "What are your terms, Captain Morrison?" "Surrender your remaining ships and submit to temporary detention while we verify the evacuation of our colonies. Your crews will be treated according to standard warfare protocols. You have my word that no harm will come to those who lay down their arms." "And if we refuse?" Crandall asked, though he already knew the answer. Morrison's expression didn't change. "Then we will continue the engagement until no Zephyrian ships remain in this system. The choice is yours, Admiral." Crandall looked around his bridge at officers who had served with distinction for decades. These were warriors who had never known defeat, scientists who had mastered technologies beyond most species' comprehension. Now they waited for his decision with the quiet dignity of professionals who understood that sometimes the honorable choice was survival. "Captain Morrison, may I ask you a question before I respond?" "Go ahead. How long has your species possessed this quantum displacement technology?" Morrison paused, as if considering how much to reveal. "This is the first time it's been used in actual combat. You had the honor of facing humanity's newest achievement." Crandall felt something that might have been admiration mixed with his defeat. The humans had developed revolutionary technology and kept it secret until the moment they needed it most. They had allowed the Zephyrians to underestimate them completely, then revealed capabilities that redefined the nature of space warfare. 1. More question, if you please. Why offer quarter to an enemy who came to destroy your colonies? "Because," Morrison replied, "humans believe that honorable enemies deserve honorable treatment. You came here following the laws of your people. We defended ourselves following the laws of ours. The battle is over. What happens next depends on the choices we make now." Crandall considered this carefully. His remaining ships were scattered and helpless against an enemy they couldn't fight. Continuing the battle would accomplish nothing except the needless death of thousands of Zephyrian warriors. Sometimes wisdom lay in accepting defeat with dignity. "Captain Morrison, I formally surrender the remaining ships of the Zephyrian Armada to your authority. We accept your terms and request treatment according to established military protocols." "Acknowledged, Admiral. Transmit your ship's locations and have them power down all weapons systems. My crew will provide coordinates for a neutral zone where your people can await pickup." The transmission ended, leaving Crandall alone with the magnitude of what had just occurred. The mighty Zephyrian Empire, which had crushed resistance across 17 star systems, had been humbled by a species they had dismissed as primitive newcomers to space. "All ships, stand down weapons and prepare for surrender," he broadcast to his scattered fleet. "The engagement is over." As his remaining vessels began powering down their systems, Crandall composed a message to the Zephyrian High Command. It would be the most difficult report he had ever written, but it was also the most important. His empire needed to understand that humanity was no longer the weak species they could dismiss or ignore. The humans had developed technology that could reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. More importantly, they had shown the wisdom to use that power defensively rather than for conquest. The species that could have destroyed the entire Zephyrian fleet without offering quarter had instead chosen mercy when victory was assured. "Admiral," his science officer approached quietly, "what do we tell the High Command about human capabilities?" Crendall looked out at the debris field that had once been 200 proud warships. "We tell them the truth. We tell them that humanity has evolved beyond our understanding, and that any future contact with their species must be based on respect rather than superiority." The battle was over, but Crendall knew that the real war, the one fought with ideas and assumptions about the nature of strength, had just begun. The Zephyrian Empire would have to rebuild not just their fleet, but their entire understanding of their place in the galaxy. Humanity had announced itself as a force that could no longer be dismissed or underestimated. The question now was whether the galaxy's older civilizations would learn from the Zephyrians' costly mistake, or whether they too would need to face the reality of human capabilities the hard way. In the distance, the quantum-displaced human ship continued its patrol, a ghost protecting the innocent and proving that sometimes the greatest strength lay not in the power to destroy, but in the wisdom to know when destruction was enough. The Defiant moved through the Zephyrian formation like death itself, striking from the quantum void where no defense could reach. Captain Morrison watched the tactical display as his ship appeared and disappeared around enemy vessels, each emergence marking another devastating attack. "Target their battle cruisers first," Morrison ordered. "Take out their command structure." Sam Brooks worked at his weapons station with deadly precision. The quantum targeting system allowed him to lock onto multiple enemies simultaneously, something that should have been impossible with conventional physics. "Sir, I can engage 6 targets at once. The quantum torpedoes exist in superposition until impact, so they can follow different probability paths to different ships." "Do it." 6 quantum torpedoes launched from the Defiant's modified weapons array, each one a ghost of destruction racing through folded space-time. The Zephyrian ships they targeted had no warning, no chance to defend themselves. Their sensors showed empty space right until the moment their hulls exploded from within. Admiral Crendall watched in horror as 6 of his most powerful vessels simply disintegrated around him. There was no flash of incoming weapons, no energy, signatures his instruments could detect. His ships were dying from attacks that came from nowhere and struck from impossible angles. "All vessels! Evasive maneuvers," he broadcast to his fleet. "Random course changes. Maximum acceleration." The crystalline Zephyrian ships scattered like startled fish, their perfect formation dissolving into chaos. They fired wildly at empty space, hoping to hit an enemy they couldn't see or understand. Their quantum cores burned at maximum output as they tried to escape an attacker that seemed to be everywhere at once. "They're running," Lucy Carter observed from her navigation station. "But they can't run from something that exists outside normal space-time." The Defiant phased through a cluster of enemy frigates, appearing just long enough for Sam to launch more quantum torpedoes before vanishing again. Each attack came from a different angle, giving the Zephyrians no pattern to follow or defend against. "Pete, how are our systems holding up?" Morrison asked as another enemy ship exploded behind them. Engineer Pete Collins monitored displays that showed reality itself bending around their ship. "Quantum core is stable, sir. Displacement. Field is actually getting stronger as we use it. It's like the system is learning how to exist in this state." "Any signs of instability?" "None, Captain. If anything, we're becoming more efficient. The quantum field is adapting to our combat maneuvers." Morrison nodded and turned back to the tactical display. Half the Zephyrian fleet was already destroyed, their wreckage floating in space as proof that superior numbers meant nothing against superior technology. The remaining ships were fleeing in all directions, but the Defiant could follow them anywhere. Sam, switch to the battlecruiser on the fleet's left flank. The one trying to reach the jump point. Target locked, sir. Firing. The quantum torpedo materialized inside the fleeing Zephyrian ship's engine compartment. The explosion tore the vessel apart from within, scattering crystalline debris across thousands of kilometers. There was no escape from weapons that could strike through dimensions. Admiral Crendall tried desperately to understand what was happening to his fleet. His greatest military minds worked frantically at their stations, analyzing sensor data that made no sense. How could an enemy attack from multiple positions simultaneously? How could weapons appear inside their ships without crossing the space between? Admiral, we've lost over half our fleet, reported his tactical officer. The human vessel appears to be phasing in and out of existence. Our weapons cannot target something that doesn't exist in normal space. What about our quantum? Sensors? Crendall demanded. Surely our most advanced instruments can detect whatever technology they're using. Sir, our quantum sensors show nothing. Either their technology operates on principles we don't understand, or they've learned to exist outside conventional reality. Crendall felt fear creep into his mind for the first time in his military career. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered 17 star systems because their technology was superior to everyone they encountered. Now they faced an enemy who had apparently transcended the normal laws of physics. Send a message to the homeworld, he ordered. Tell them we've encountered a human weapon that can phase between dimensions. Request immediate reinforcement and scientific analysis teams. Sir, the nearest Zephyrian fleet is 8 days away. I don't think we can survive that long. Admiral Crendall looked at his tactical display and saw the truth his officer wouldn't voice. At their current rate of loss, his entire fleet would be destroyed within the hour. 200 of the Empire's finest warships, defeated by a single human vessel they had dismissed as primitive. Aboard the Defiant, Morrison coordinated the systematic destruction of the alien fleet with cold efficiency. Each attack was precisely calculated to maximize damage while conserving their quantum energy reserves. They struck command ships first, then weapons platforms, then support vessels. Captain, I'm picking up distress signals from the enemy fleet, Tim reported from his communications station. They're calling for help, but their nearest reinforcements are days away. Any change in their tactics? Morrison asked. They're trying to group together for mutual defense, but it's not working. They can't defend against attacks that come from inside their formation. Morrison watched another Zephyrian cruiser explode as Sam's latest torpedo found its target. The enemy was learning that conventional military thinking was useless against quantum warfare. Their shields, armor, and weapons were all designed for attacks that came from normal space. They had no defense against enemies who could strike from the spaces between dimensions. Lucy, take us through the center of their remaining formation. Let's finish this. The Defiant phased directly into the heart of the Zephyrian fleet's last desperate defensive position. To the aliens, their formation was impenetrable, overlapping shields and concentrated firepower that could destroy anything that approached. To the humans in their quantum-displaced ship, the alien defenses were meaningless. They existed in a state where solid matter was merely a suggestion and energy weapons were shadows of their former selves. Multiple targets locked, Sam announced. Launching full spread. 20 quantum torpedoes emerged from the Defiant's weapons arrays, each one following a different probability path through folded space-time. They materialized simultaneously inside 20 different Zephyrian ships, turning the aliens' final stand into a spectacular light show of destruction. "Sir, enemy fleet strength down to 30 vessels," Lucy reported. "They're breaking formation and attempting to flee the system." Morrison considered allowing some to escape, to carry word of humanity's new capabilities back to their empire. But then he thought about the 2 million civilians evacuating behind them, and the children on those colony ships who deserve to grow up in peace. "No survivors," he ordered quietly. "We end this here and now." The Defiant began the final phase of the battle, hunting down the scattered survivors one by one. Each quantum torpedo strike was a message written in fire across the darkness of space. Humanity would defend itself with whatever means necessary, and underestimating human ingenuity was a mistake that could only be made once. The Zephyrian Empire had learned too late that the species they dismissed as primitive had quietly revolutionized the nature of war itself. The quantum communication array hummed to life as Ambassador Kate Williams prepared for what might be humanity's last chance at peace. She sat in the small diplomatic cabin aboard the Defiant, surrounded by translation computers and cultural databases. Kate had spent 15 years learning alien languages and customs. She understood how different species thought and what motivated them to fight or negotiate. Today, all that experience felt worthless. "Ambassador, we're ready to establish contact with the Zephyrian fleet," reported Tim Davis from the bridge. His voice came through the intercom with barely controlled tension. "They're responding to our diplomatic frequency." Kate straightened her uniform and checked her notes one final time. The Zephyrians valued strength and directness. They respected military power, but despised what they saw as weakness. Finding the right balance would determine whether millions of humans lived or died. "Put me through," she said. The main screen in her cabin flickered and showed the bridge of a Zephyrian warship. Kate had seen pictures of their species before, but meeting them face to face was different. Fleet Commander Vexatai stood 7 feet tall, with blue-gray skin that seemed to shimmer in the light. His forearms moved with precise grace, and his large black eyes showed intelligence and complete confidence. Behind him, the Zephyrian bridge looked like something from a dream. Crystalline control panels glowed with soft light. Officers moved between stations that seemed to float in the air. Everything was smooth and perfect, like it had been grown rather than built. "I am Ambassador Kate Williams, representing the United Human Federation," Kate began, using the formal greetings she had practiced. "I come seeking peaceful resolution to our current conflict." Vextai studied her for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was deep and musical, translated by computers into perfect English. "I am Fleet Commander Vexatai of the glorious Zephyrian Armada. Your species has trespassed in space that belongs to us. You will withdraw immediately or face destruction." Kate kept her expression neutral. She had expected this opening. "Commander, the star systems in question were settled by human colonists over 30 years ago. We have established legitimate claims through exploration and development. Surely, we can find a solution that benefits both our peoples." "Your claims are meaningless," Vexatai replied. His 4 arms gestured dismissively. "The Zephyrian Empire expands where it chooses. Lesser species step aside or are removed. This is the natural order." "We're not asking for much," Kate continued, leaning forward slightly. "Perhaps we could discuss territorial boundaries, trade agreements. Our species could benefit from cultural and technological exchange." Vextai's laugh was like broken glass. "What could primitives like you possibly offer us?" We have observed your technology. Your ships are crude metal boxes held together by desperation. Your weapons are barely adequate for defending against asteroids. Your people have been in space for less than 2 centuries. We have ruled among the stars for over 1,000 years. Kate felt heat rise in her cheeks, but forced herself to remain calm. Human ingenuity should not be underestimated, Commander. We may be new to space, but we learn quickly and adapt to any situation. Adaptation, Vextai mused, studying something on a screen Kate couldn't see. Yes, we have heard of this human trait. You survive in environments that would kill other species. You fight when others surrender. You build when others destroy. It is interesting, but ultimately meaningless against superior force. The communication paused as another Zephyrian officer approached Vextai. Kate could see them talking in their own language, musical sounds that the translation computers couldn't process. When they finished, Vextai turned back to her with what might have been amusement. Admiral Krendal reminds me that time grows short, he said. Your species has 6 hours to begin complete withdrawal from the contested systems. All human military vessels must surrender themselves to Zephyrian custody. All colonists must abandon their settlements and return to their home system. These terms are not negotiable. Kate's heart sank, but she pressed on. Commander, those colonies represent the homes and lives of 2 million people. Families have lived there for generations. They've built communities, schools, farms. You're asking us to abandon everything we've worked for. We ask nothing, Vextai corrected. We command. The strong take what they require. The weak submit or perish. This has always been the way of the universe. What if we could offer you something valuable in return for allowing our colonies to remain? Kate asked desperately. We have resources, technology, cultural knowledge that might interest you. Vextai's large eyes seemed to gleam. Show us this valuable technology. Kate hesitated. She didn't know what Project Iron Wall involved, but she knew it was humanity's greatest secret. I would need to consult with my superiors. Perhaps we could extend the deadline to allow for proper negotiations. You have nothing we want, Vextai said flatly. Your desperation proves our assessment correct. Humans are a young species, playing with forces beyond their understanding. You stumbled into space technology by accident, and now pretend to be equals of ancient civilizations. Kate tried one more approach. Commander, what harm could it do to allow more time? If we truly are as primitive as you believe, what threat could we possibly pose to your mighty fleet? Vextai considered this for a moment. On his bridge, other officers moved between glowing stations preparing for battle. Kate could see weapon displays charging and tactical screens showing human colony positions. You raise an interesting point, he said finally. Very well. You have 3 hours instead of 6. Use this time to begin your withdrawal. Do not mistake our generosity for weakness. 3 hours? Kate asked, trying to hide her shock. Commander, that's barely enough time to evacuate a single settlement, much less 3 entire star systems. Then you should begin immediately, Vextai replied. And, Ambassador, tell your military commanders that any resistance will result in the complete destruction of all human colonies. We will not distinguish between civilians and combatants. Your choice is simple. Surrender everything, or lose everything. The transmission ended, leaving Kate staring at a blank screen. She sat in silence for several minutes, thinking about children on Haven Station who were probably playing in parks their grandparents had built. She thought about farmers on Liberty Point who had spent their entire lives growing food in alien soil. She thought about the researchers on New Boston who were discovering new medicines that could help people across the galaxy. All of it would be gone in 3 hours unless humanity found a miracle. Kate activated her communication link to the bridge. Captain Morrison, diplomatic contact has failed. The Zephyrians have reduced our deadline to 3 hours. They're demanding complete surrender. Captain Morrison's voice came back steady and calm. Understood, Ambassador. Thank you for trying. We'll handle things from here. Kate knew what that meant. The Defiant would fight. 1 human ship against 200 alien warships. It was hopeless. But they would try anyway because that's what humans did when everything was at stake. She began composing her final report to Earth Command, documenting the failure of diplomacy and the coming battle. Outside her small cabin, she could feel the ship's engines changing pitch as Captain Morrison positioned them for whatever came next. The distance between the fleets closed to 30,000 kilometers when Captain Morrison gave the order that would change everything. Pete, activate the quantum displacement drive. Full power. Engineer Pete Collins's hands moved across controls that seemed to respond before he touched them. Deep in the Defiant's modified hull, systems that existed on the edge of known physics came online. The quantum core that had been humming quietly for months suddenly roared to life with power that defied measurement. Quantum field building, Pete reported, his voice tight with concentration. Core temperature rising within acceptable parameters. Displacement matrix forming around the ship's hull. The bridge lights flickered as reality itself began to bend around them. Lucy Carter gripped her navigation console as she felt a strange sensation, like falling in all directions at once. The stars visible through the main screen started to shimmer and dance, as if seen through water. Sir, I'm getting some very strange readings, Sam Brooks called from his weapons station. Our targeting systems are showing multiple positions for our ship simultaneously. That's normal, Pete replied without looking up from his quantum displays. We're beginning to exist in quantum superposition. The displacement field is spreading our ship's existence across multiple probability states. Captain Morrison felt the change in his bones. The familiar vibration of the ship's engines had been replaced by something deeper, more fundamental. It was like the difference between hearing a song and feeling music in your soul. Status report, Pete. Quantum displacement at 40% and climbing. We're starting to phase out of normal space-time. In about 30 seconds, we'll be completely displaced from conventional reality. On the main screen, the Zephyrian fleet continued its steady approach. 200 crystalline warships moved in perfect formation, their weapons charging for what they expected to be a simple execution. They showed no sign of detecting the fundamental changes happening to their target. They can't see what's happening to us, Lucy observed, watching her sensor displays. Their instruments are designed for conventional physics. They have no idea we're about to disappear. Distance to enemy fleet? Morrison asked. 20,000. Kilometers and closing fast, Lucy replied. They'll be in weapons range in 90 seconds. Pete, how much longer until full displacement? 10 seconds, Captain. Pete's voice carried a mixture of excitement and terror. Sir, I should warn you. Once we go fully quantum, there's no guarantee we can return to normal space. This technology has never been tested in combat conditions. Morrison looked around his bridge at the crew who had followed him through countless missions. Lucy, brilliant and brave, who could navigate through the worst stellar storms. Pete, who could repair anything and understand technology that baffled experts. Sam, who never missed a target and never backed down from a fight. Tim, who kept them connected to the rest of humanity across impossible distances. "We didn't come this far to surrender now," Morrison said firmly. "Complete the displacement." "Quantum displacement at 100%, Pete announced. "We are now fully phased out of normal space-time." The change was immediate and overwhelming. The stars outside didn't disappear, but they became something else entirely. Reality took on a fluid quality, as if they were swimming through the universe rather than flying through it. The ship felt solid under their feet, but Morrison knew they had become something that existed between dimensions. "Status of enemy fleet?" Morrison asked. Lucy checked her instruments, which now showed readings that seemed impossible. "Sir, they've completely lost us. Their sensors are scanning empty space where we used to be. Their targeting systems can't lock on to anything." On the tactical display, the Zephyrian ships had stopped their advance and were moving into defensive positions. Morrison could imagine the confusion on their bridges as their prey simply vanished without explanation. "Can we still see them?" Morrison asked. "Perfectly," Sam replied from his weapons station. "We exist in quantum superposition, which means we can observe and interact with normal space while remaining undetectable ourselves. It's like being a ghost with physical powers." "And our weapons?" "This is where it gets interesting," Sam said with growing excitement. "Our torpedoes and energy beams can be quantum-phased until the moment of impact. They travel through normal space as probability waves, then materialize at the target. Nothing can block them because they don't technically exist until they hit." Morrison nodded grimly. Humanity's scientists had created the ultimate stealth weapon, a ship that could attack from a dimension their enemies didn't know existed. "Lock onto their lead vessel. Let's announce our presence." Sam's hands moved over controls that now glowed with quantum energy. "Target locked. Quantum torpedoes armed and ready." Fire. The torpedo left the Defiant's launch tube as a shimmer in space-time, a possibility rather than a physical object. It raced toward the Zephyrian flagship at speeds that bent the laws of physics, existing in multiple states simultaneously until the moment of impact. Fleet Commander Vextai was studying his sensors in confusion when his ship suddenly exploded around him. The quantum torpedo materialized inside his flagship's shields and detonated within the crystalline hull. The Zephyrian vessel, designed to withstand conventional weapons, simply disintegrated as energy erupted from within its most protected spaces. "Target destroyed," Sam reported with grim satisfaction. "Their flagship is gone." The Zephyrian fleet erupted into chaos. Admiral Krendall, now in command from his battlecruiser, ordered his ships to spread formation and search for the invisible enemy. Their sensors swept space frantically, but found nothing. The human ship had vanished as completely as if it had never existed. "Pete, can we maintain displacement indefinitely?" Morrison asked. "For several hours, sir. The quantum core is stable, and our systems are adapting to the displacement field. We're running at optimal efficiency." Morrison studied the tactical display showing 200 alien ships searching desperately for an enemy they couldn't find. The Zephyrians had superior technology and overwhelming numbers, but they were fighting a war they didn't understand against an opponent who had rewritten the rules of combat. "Lucy, plot an intercept course through their formation. Sam, prepare for continuous fire. We're going to hit them from angles they can't defend against." "Aye, sir," both officers replied. The Defiant moved through quantum space like a predator, stalking prey. To the Zephyrians, their attacker remained completely invisible. To the humans, their enemies were sitting targets waiting to be destroyed. "Sir," Tim called from his communications station. I'm picking up transmissions from the Zephyrian fleet. They're trying to contact their homeworld for instructions on fighting an enemy they can't see. Can they get help? Morrison asked. Not for several days, sir, and I don't think conventional reinforcements would help them anyway. Morrison nodded. The Zephyrians had built their empire on technological superiority and overwhelming force. They had never faced an enemy who could attack from outside normal reality itself. Their weapons were useless against targets that didn't exist in conventional space-time. Beginning attack run, Lucy announced as the Defiant moved through the heart of the enemy formation like a ghost passing through walls. The battle for humanity's survival had begun, and the rules of war would never be the same. The Defiant phased back into normal space-time with a subtle shift that Captain Morrison felt in his bones. After hours of existing in quantum displacement, returning to conventional reality was like waking up from a dream that had been more real than life itself. The stars outside the main viewing screen resumed their familiar, steady glow. Quantum displacement offline, Engineer Pete Collins reported from his modified station. All systems returning to normal operational parameters. The quantum core is cooling down to standby levels. Morrison looked at the tactical display that now showed empty space where the Zephyrian armada had once threatened humanity's colonies. Debris fields marked the graves of nearly 200 alien warships, while 30 surrendered vessels sat powerless in the neutral zone they had established. Status of the colony ships? Morrison asked. Communications Officer Tim Davis checked his displays. All evacuation vessels have reached safe distance, sir. New Boston, Haven Station, and Liberty Point report successful withdrawal of all civilian populations. Total time from start of evacuation to safety, 4 hours and 37 minutes. Morrison nodded with satisfaction. They had bought the colonies enough time to escape, and more importantly, they had demonstrated that humanity would defend its people against any threat. The cost had been high for their enemies, but it could have been avoided if the Zephyrians had chosen diplomacy over conquest. Captain, Lucy Carter called from her navigation station, I'm detecting multiple incoming ships on long-range sensors. They're not Zephyrian designs. How many? Morrison asked. At least 50 vessels from 6 different species. They're approaching. Slowly. Probably to observe rather than engage. Morrison wasn't surprised. Word of the battle would spread quickly through the galaxy's communication networks. Every species that had dealings with the Zephyrian Empire would want to understand what had happened here and what it meant for the balance of power among the stars. Tim, open a general broadcast on all frequencies. Time to make humanity's position clear. The communications officer nodded and activated the system. All frequencies open, sir. You're broadcasting to every ship in the system and anyone monitoring these channels. Morrison stood in the center of his bridge, looking out at stars that suddenly seemed different than they had a few hours ago. Humanity had crossed a threshold today, revealing capabilities that would reshape how other species viewed them. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Human Federation vessel Defiant, he began, his voice carrying across space to dozens of listening species. The Zephyrian fleet that entered this system with hostile intent has been neutralized. 30 vessels have surrendered and their crews are being treated according to established military protocols. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. The galaxy was listening, and what he said now would determine how other species approached humanity in the future. The technology demonstrated today represents humanity's commitment to defending our people and our colonies. We did not seek this conflict, but when faced with demands for complete surrender, we responded with the full capabilities at our disposal. Morrison looked around his bridge at the crew who had made this victory possible. Lucy, whose steady navigation had brought them through impossible quantum maneuvers. Pete, whose understanding of revolutionary technology had kept them alive in folded space-time. Sam, whose precision with quantum weapons had ended the battle decisively. Tim, whose communications had coordinated their defense and would now carry their message to the stars. To any species considering aggressive action against human colonies or citizens, understand this. We are no longer the primitive newcomers you may have believed us to be. We have developed capabilities that can defend against any threat, and we will use them when necessary. Several of the approaching alien ships had stopped their advance, apparently re-evaluating their intentions based on what they had witnessed. However, Morrison continued, humanity remains committed to peaceful coexistence with all species willing to approach us with respect rather than hostility. We offer our hand in friendship to those who come in peace, and our shield in defense to those who threaten innocent lives. Ambassador Kate Williams had joined him on the bridge, listening to his broadcast with approval. She stepped forward to add her voice to humanity's new position in galactic affairs. This is Ambassador Kate Williams, representing the United Human Federation Diplomatic Corps. Our offer of negotiation and mutual cooperation remains open to all species. What happened here today was defense, not conquest. Humanity seeks to build relationships based on equality and shared benefit. Morrison nodded to Tim, who closed the general broadcast and opened a secure channel to Earth Command. Admiral Ross appeared on the main screen, her expression showing relief and something that might have been pride. Captain Morrison, we've been monitoring the engagement from here. Outstanding work by you and your crew. The quantum displacement system performed beyond all expectations. Thank you, Admiral. What are our orders regarding the surrendered Zephyrian? Vessels? Hold them until their government sends representatives to arrange prisoner exchange. Intel suggests the Zephyrian High Command is in emergency session, trying to understand what happened to their fleet. This defeat will reshape their entire military doctrine. Morrison wasn't surprised. An empire built on technological superiority would have to fundamentally reconsider its approach when faced with an enemy whose technology transcended their understanding. Sir, Lucy interrupted, one of the approaching vessels is transmitting a diplomatic signal. It's from the Altarian Consortium. They're requesting permission to approach for peaceful contact. Morrison exchanged glances with Ambassador Williams, who nodded. Grant them approach clearance, but maintain defensive readiness. As the alien diplomatic vessel approached, Morrison reflected on how much had changed in a single day. This morning, humanity had been seen as a minor species, barely worthy of consideration by the galaxy's major powers. Tonight, they had demonstrated capabilities that would force every civilization to reevaluate their assumptions. The quantum displacement technology was just the beginning. Humanity's greatest strength had always been its ability to adapt, innovate, and overcome seemingly impossible challenges. Other species might have superior individual technologies, but humans had something different. The ability to think beyond conventional limitations and find solutions that others never considered. Captain, Pete said from his engineering station, I'm already thinking about improvements we could make to the quantum systems. What we accomplished today was impressive, but it's only the first step. Give me a few months and I can make this technology even more effective. Morrison smiled. That was humanity in a nutshell, never satisfied with their current achievements, always looking for ways to improve and advance. The Zephyrians had dismissed them as primitives who stumbled into space technology. They couldn't have been more Wrong. Humans didn't stumble into anything. They charged ahead with determination, creativity, and the absolute refusal to accept that anything was impossible. Today's battle had proven that when humanity was threatened, they didn't just fight back, they revolutionized the very nature of fighting itself. Set course for Earth, Morrison ordered. It's time to go home and show the galaxy what humanity is really capable of. The Defiant turned toward home, carrying with her the message that would spread across the stars. Humanity had announced its presence in the galaxy not with bluster or threats, but with the quiet competence that defined the human spirit. They had faced overwhelming odds and responded with devastating effectiveness that would be remembered for generations. The age of underestimating humanity was over. The age of respecting human capabilities had begun. And somewhere in the depths of space, other species were already calculating whether it was better to be humanity's friend or to risk becoming another object lesson in the dangers of dismissing human ingenuity. The choice, as always, was theirs to make.